One of the most powerful yet least used features of Crosscare is the ability to have the system generate automatic recalls and reminders for patients who need something doing to them. So to set up recalls and reminders, go to Setup, go to Options, System Config, and then go to Recalls. Now this window isn't particularly friendly and it doesn't help you much, but it's reasonably straightforward to set up. The easiest way to explain how they work is to take you through some examples. So what they do is they get the system to remind you to do things without you having to set recalls against each individual patient record. So the system just works out what's due based on what's in the patient record, and they automatically turn on and off, saving lots of administration time. You can see them in special alerts on the clinical desktop as part of caseloads as well, but also in reports, which is where the real power can come in. So everyone who's due for something can have a letter or an email merged from the details and sent to them. The headings across the window are title, type, start age, end age, interval, sex, set by, reset forever, reset by, and use code date. So the title is the name of the recall. There are two types, so you can either have the system generate the recall for you, or if you use E for event, it will highlight the fact that an event has taken place for that patient. It's probably not a great place to put events, but the code works exactly the same way. So is the patient due a recall? Has an event happened? So the two have been put together. You then get a starting age and an ending age, so you can recall people only within certain age parameters, and you get an interval which is in days. Then the sex, so you can specify males only, females only. Set by gives you the code that sets the recall, so you enter a code that sets off the recall. So if I want to recall people for an asthma review, they must have asthma in their record first for the recall to apply. So my set by code would be a diagnosis of asthma, for example. Reset forever is a code that you can put in that will turn the recall off completely, permanently. So if you want to do the asthma recall, you can set by a code for asthma, but reset forever by asthma resolved. So if they no longer have asthma, you don't want to recall them at all. And then the reset by code is the code that turns off the recall itself. So again, in our asthma example, we'd set by asthma, we'd reset forever if they had asthma resolved and they no longer had asthma at all, and then we'd reset the reminder by the annual asthma review. And use code date is a yes or a no, depending on whether you've put a date in a user-defined window really is a comment against the SNOMED code rather than an actual date. So, some examples. If the patient hasn't sent me back their 10-week food diary, I've got a reminder or a recall to trigger me to do something about it. So the type is an R for a recall. There are no start and end ages because I don't mind how old the patient is. And the interval is then 21. The reminder becomes active 21 days after the food diary form is recorded as having been sent. There's no sex parameter because this recall applies to both sexes, and the set by code is the 10-week food diary form sent. So a patient must have a code against their record saying we've sent them the food diary form before the recall becomes active. It's reset forever once we receive the form back, but if we haven't received the form back within 21 days of having sent it, the reminder will become active. The annual asthma review, again, is a recall. The interval is 365 days because it's an annual review. It's set by a code for asthma, so I only want to record people or recall people who've had asthma. I forget about the recall completely if their asthma is resolved and they no longer have it. And my reset by code is the annual asthma review. So if I've got a patient that has asthma but doesn't have their asthma resolved and hasn't had an annual asthma review in the last 365 days, the reminder will be active. I could get flu vaccinations to be recalled. So again, it's a recall. I'm going to start at age 50 and end at age 999. So effectively, we recall everybody over 50. Again, the interval is 365 days. We don't put in a sex parameter, so we get both sexes. Now this time we don't have a set by code because it doesn't matter. We want all the patients. They don't have to have anything particular first in order for us to do the recall. We're not going to reset this forever because I want to keep recalling them every year. And then the reminder is reset by a record being entered of them actually having their annual influenza vaccination. So this one will record anybody over 50 who hasn't had an annual influenza vaccination in the last 365 days. So the title of this one is Recent Death of Relative. It's a type E for event. There are no age bands. The interval is 30, so if this has happened within the last 30 days, we want to know about it. And it's set by the code for a death of a relative. So when I access a patient's record, if they've had an event recorded against their record saying they've had a death of a relative within the last 30 days, it highlights to me to tell me that. So the reminders are shown really in three places. If the patient is highlighted in red on my caseload, then they have a reminder, so the system tells me I've got to do something about them. When I access a record, the special alerts box can display the reminders, as can the reminders button at the bottom be highlighted in red if there's a reminder active. But we can also run reports to tell us who needs recalling and reminding. So I can choose to filter on reminders. I can say that I want the reminder details to contain 10 week to get the people who I need to send a 10-week food diary to, and I can output the reminder details just to make sure I get the right people. So once I've got my list of patients who need the 10-week food diary sending to them, I've got a number of choices. I can hit the printer button and I can mail merge to a standard recall letter that I have preset, and I can send them all a letter. But what I could also do is I can save this active list. So if I save this list as food diary, I can then go to the administration module, I can go to the admin menu, and I can use our external messaging service. So I can either email or text message, and I can pick up my patients from the report and I can send them an email saying that their food diary is overdue, or I could send them a text message saying that their food diary is overdue and I want them to send it back. So recalls and reminders, a powerful thing. You can use them to really communicate with your patients and chase up things that are late, but actually rarely used in Crosscare, which is a real shame. There's also a PDF available to download a bit further down the page, full of explanations and more examples.